My name's Frank Day. I've been studying pedaling technique for about 20 years, ever since I invented power cranks. I think I have a pretty good understanding of what's important. I recently posted a video that goes into this in some detail. The problem is that presentation can get pretty tedious and it lasts almost an hour. A request was made for the 5-minute version. This is that version. There are 4 completely separate areas in which a cyclist can improve. The first is training. Everyone knows this. Train more or harder and you'll get faster. That's usually true unless it causes you an injury or one has reached a plateau. Now come the 3 additional areas you probably haven't thought of that power cranks help. 1. Increase the muscle mass used when cycling. 2. Optimize overall efficiency. And finally, optimize crank length. Increasing muscle mass, overall efficiency, and crank length all relate to what I call pedaling technique. Let me define pedaling technique. Pedaling technique is what the muscles do to power the bicycle. It's not the forces you see on the pedals because there are a lot of non-muscular forces on those pedals that show up, like gravity. Pedaling technique cannot be measured directly, so it must be calculated or inferred. This is confusing, but part of the reason this area is so poorly understood. Let's move on. All cycling power comes from the leg muscles. If you increase the muscle mass you use, you will generate more power. The 2 ways cyclists can get more muscle mass is to either do strength training or to use more of the muscles they already have. Few cyclists do the first, and even if they do, the latter is a more efficient way to go if you know how to do it. Let's examine the leg muscles. There are 4 major muscle groups in the legs. If I were to ask you which muscles do you use the most when cycling, most of you would say the quads and the glutes. They dominate, followed by the hamstrings, and lastly, the hip flexors. You would be wrong. In almost everyone, the glutes do the most work, followed by the hip flexors, the hamstrings, and lastly, the quads. The muscle that is used the least is the quadriceps, the muscle most of you think you are using the most, followed by the hamstrings. Bet you found that surprising. The reason has to do with how we learned how to pedal when kids. Anyhow, half of the big muscles in the leg are being underutilized. Learning how to use them all equally can result in a large increase in cycling muscle mass. A 20-30% increases in power are waiting for most of you here if you just train up and then use the muscles you already have. This is the major benefit power cranks provides the user. Next, maximize efficiency. Increase efficiency and you'll get more power out for the same muscular effort. The 2 big areas here are minimizing the cost of making the pedals go around and maximizing the efficiency of the contracting muscle. These are related and done by optimizing pedal speed. For most of you, there's a 10 to 15% potential power increase awaiting you if you put in the effort to optimize this aspect of your pedaling technique. And last, crank length. Crank length is a problem when it's difficult for the rider to bring his leg over the top. This adds an unnecessary inefficiency. The shorter you are, the bigger this problem. It's also a huge problem for almost every triathlete trying to ride in a good aero position. Most triathletes are riding cranks that are way too long for either optimum power or optimum aerodynamics or both. Why do most bike fitters ignore crank length, even though where the pedals are determine everything about the bike fit? Well, you'll have to ask them. So, there you go, the 5-minute version of what's important about getting faster on a bicycle. The main takeaway is there are three areas that most of you are ignoring, and all of them are related to pedaling technique, and all are important if you want to maximize your power. It basically comes down to needing to increase both the muscle mass used and cycling efficiency. All of these areas are difficult to work on without power cranks, which is how it's now possible to explain why our new users regularly report around a 40% power improvement after 6 to 9 months of immersion use. Lots of power improvement is waiting there for most of you if you'll only look for it, then correct your technique weaknesses. If you found this interesting but weak on the evidence, I'd recommend you listen to the long version of this talk. Train with power cranks and you'll bike faster, run faster, and it's guaranteed. Thanks for listening.